Welcome to another special edition of Daily Airline News, looking at the search for MH370. I'm Jeffrey Thomas and joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey, who has taken Whisper technology, perfected it as a tracking tool to find a new location for MH370. Good morning, Richard.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey.
And let's kick it off as usual with an update of Armada 7806, please.
Armada 7806 has now been at sea for 20 days on this swing. A search agreement is still not signed, but Ocean Infinity are continuing their work according to plan. Still no news of a signing ceremony. And I have to say, there's been no statement from Ocean Infinity with regard to MH370 in 2025 at all, which is kind of disturbing. There have been several statements from Malaysia, and there have been loads of reports in the press, but there's nothing confirmed from Ocean Infinity. Grace Nathan, the daughter of a passenger on flight MH370 and a spokesperson for a group of relatives, expressed the sentiment of many. She is quoted in press in India. We have waited more than 10 years. We deserve answers, even if they are hard to hear. So there might be answers that are hard to hear, but they're ready to listen to them.
Mm.
Some of the next of kin are relieved. Others have a sense of caution. The journey to this point has been filled with false hopes and delays, and many are wary of yet another disappointing outcome. So Ocean Infinity is continuing their survey work in preparation for a search, and I would plead with Malaysia to stop playing media games and actually get on with the signing ceremony. The weather in the search area is still good, moderate winds and a wave height of currently 1.7 meters or 5.6 feet. There is a new Category 2 tropical cyclone, Courtney, to the north, but that is still a long way off.
Mm. I had a look at the weather coming up over the next week or so, and there's a few cold fronts coming along that'll impact the Ocean Infinity's Armada in probably about 4 or 5 days' time. So that's something to watch out for as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Now we've had some fabulous questions, Richard. I spent quite a number of hours, and I know you have too, going through them. And I'm delighted to say that a lot of our viewers are also answering them for us. And there's some great debates going on out there. But we've picked some out that we really think sort of summarize the general sentiment that's out there. And Richard, I want to run through these with you. From Paul. Hi, gents. I tune in daily to your channel. As the agreement with Malaysia has not yet been signed, Ocean Infinity is steering ahead, searching. My gut feel is that Ocean Infinity has already found MH370, but wait to make the claim in the light of an agreement signed with Malaysia. How far-fetched do you think is my feeling?
Well, my personal view, Paul, is that Ocean Infinity have not already found MH370. If they had, I think they would quit the methodical survey work that they're currently doing, and they would focus on mapping the debris field, taking photographs and videos of the wreckage and the debris items. We would see a lot of ROV deployment at one particular location. Of course, this would be a giveaway to numerous observers of the MH370 search, which includes the Malaysians and also all the other underwater search companies out there. So your idea is not too far-fetched, but I have a different view.
Yes, if they have found it, they certainly want to disguise the fact that they've found it, and absolutely. Now, Ruth says, I'm not sure whether she should have said this or not, but my husband is the captain on that ship now. Hope the search is successful. So I've sent her a note asking whether he can take some video and send it to us, but I don't think we'll get that.
No, I don't think we will. But Ruth, say hi to your husband when you next speak to him, and let him know we're all thinking of them out there, and they're doing a great job.
Indeed. Now, James has asked, "Hi guys, great to hear the daily updates. It's been incredibly informative. Can we get an update on those unidentified planes from Diego Garcia, please?" And several people have asked that question.
Yeah, well, another episode is planned. We're thinking maybe in this coming Sunday. The aircraft, the unidentified aircraft, were definitely following the MH370 flight path as defined by Boeing in their initial analysis. One scenario from Boeing was a flight at flight level 350 and maximum range cruise mode at 450 knots ground speed, true airspeed of 443 knots, which is Mach 0.79. The track was via waypoint AKPUM, AKPUM, and close to waypoint Mutmi on a track of 180.3 degrees true. So we'll have more to tell you in the coming days about this.
In fact, there was quite a few. There must have been 7 or 8 people who were asking about the Diego Garcia unidentified plane, so that should be very welcome on Sunday. Another question, when you do detect an anomaly in the whisper signal that tells you that it might have been MH370, or is it a process of eliminating all known aircraft in the area by looking for their whisper signal first and seeing what you're left with?
Yeah, you're correct. You've eliminate all known aircraft in the area. You also eliminate aircraft crossing the whisper propagation path at any point of the whisper links, which you're where you're detecting an anomaly. So the it's a complicated process, but the ionospheric propagation will start at a transmitter somewhere in the world at ground level or up in the mountains, maybe, and then head up to the ionosphere, several hundred kilometers above the Earth. Then it gets refracted back to the Earth at a point maybe 3,000 kilometers downstream from the transmitter towards the receiver. And there can be several hops. Now, commercial aircraft only up to around 12 kilometers of altitude. So, for the most of the time, an ionospheric propagation up to, say, 300 kilometers will not be in the range of aircraft. But of course, near the transmitter, near the receiver, or near these interim landing points on a multi-hop path, then it is possible that there's another aircraft which will disturb the whisper signal, and we have to discount those aircraft.
On the same subject, and I've actually answered this one, but we need to answer it for the viewers as well. Have you demonstrated that you can use whisper technique on flights other than MH370 to confirm precision of this method? One presumably where you can validate against reported position of the aircraft.
Yes, we have. Our most recent paper analyzes 48 flights of Boeing 777 aircraft in every region of the world and every time of day, day of the week, month of the year. And what Professor Simon Maskell and his team at Liverpool University are doing is literally analyzing thousands of flights. And we compare the whisper data against the ADS-B data. So we have all the whisper data and all the ADS-B data. It's a huge amount of data. But at Liverpool, they have a very large computer network and they can handle big data.
Sounds it's just amazing, isn't it? Now, woodchuck, interesting name. Does Whisper have the ability to discover the flight that was heading to Japan and was approximately 30 minutes ahead of MH370 in the South China Sea, and allegedly made contact with MH370 on an emergency frequency at about 0130 Malaysia time? I think this is a good lead to follow up on. Interesting question.
Yeah, fascinating question. We actually don't need the whisper data for this. We already have the ADS-B data, which tells us that flight MH88 from Kuala Lumpur to Tokyo was 48 minutes and 37 seconds ahead of MH370 and initially along the same flight path. That is until MH370 diverted back over Malaysia. Now, there have been some unverified claims circulating on aviation forums that a Malaysian Airlines flight, MH88 in particular, the Tokyo service, may have had a brief radio contact with MH370 shortly after it lost radar contact. One forum posted a note from an anonymous pilot reporting hearing mumbling on an emergency frequency and suggests he might have been talking with the MH370's co-pilot. However, no official evidence or confirmation from Malaysia Airlines or the investigating agencies has substantiated these reports. So, in short, while the rumors exist, there's no verified proof that flight MH88 contacted MH370.
You think that if that had occurred, then it would definitely be in the report because it's a piece of important but benign information. It would help enormously if it was the case. There'd be no reason not to report it.
Indeed, but I guess the viewer's comment is driving at the question whether such
Yeah,
reports were followed up by the investigation.
yeah. Okay, and on the similar sort of tact, Richard, another person's asked, why didn't they track phone locations and chat signals? One of the relatives of MH370 stated that chat sign was still showing green dot when they were informed that the plane disappeared. Why not track phone chat signs? America had the technology at the time. Also, hats off to your work.
Yeah, it's a good point. There was a quite thorough check made of the crew mobile phones, but as far as I'm aware, there were no check ever made of the passengers' mobile phones. And it is, to my mind, absolutely ridiculous that no check was made on the passengers' mobile phones, just like they did on the crew's phone. Now, for the crew, they only checked with mobile phone authorities in Malaysia, but it is conceivable that other mobile phone authorities, for example, in Indonesia, might have picked up a mobile phone from MH370. And at one point, we did investigate. There are offshore oil rigs off the coast of Indonesia, which actually have a mobile phone base station located on one of the rigs to enable people in the area working on the oil rigs to be able to use their mobile phone. And we asked them specifically to check. We knew the time that MH370 would have been in the vicinity of the oil rig, and we asked them to check, but they could not find any contact with any from any passenger or crew member. So there's a lot more that could be done in this avenue.
Yeah. Richard, could you please explain to the viewers how the unique characteristics of the ionosphere react to different elements at different times of the day and indeed season? Love your work.
You got me on my favorite subject now,
Yeah,
so
your work.
be prepared for about the next hour of a report. So basically, there's a short answer and a long answer to that question. I'll give you the short answer first and maybe a few excerpts from the long answer. There is general acceptance of the statement that the ionosphere is subject to a host of dynamic and dynamical processes, including atmospheric gravity waves, Alphen waves, fast mode magneto-hydrodynamic waves, meteor trail formation and decay, plasma instabilities of many spatial and temporal scales, and sudden ionospheric disturbances resulting from impulsive solar events. There you go. That's the short
Mm.
answer. Now, the long answer you can read in our various papers on Whisper, which you can download on my website. There was a guy called Carl Gauss who predicted the existence of the ionosphere back in 1839, and it was eventually proven by Sir Edward Appleton in 1927. In 1956, the US Naval Research Lab concluded a set of experiments that showed that the ionosphere is generally stable for high frequency skywave radar to succeed with over the horizon aircraft detection. And there were two guys called Klaus Bibel and Bodo Reinisch in 1978 who conducted a number of experiments and determined the coherent integration time of the ionosphere. And the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration concluded that this coherent integration time was of the order of tens of seconds in nearly all ionospheric conditions. And as I pointed out, the so-called space weather or the solar flux level is recorded every day, and there's a solar flux index which you can download. And at the time of MH370, ionospheric propagation was very good, and there was a high solar flux index. And the software we use actually has a model called the IRI 2007, which is the international reference model of the ionosphere. And we use that to work out how propagation paths are affected by the ionosphere and how they're refracted back to the Earth.
Fascinating stuff. Amazing. Yeah. Let us from Spain asks if Seventh Arc showed a very steep descent, how could the airplane be controlled with a lack of electrical energy for preventing a high-speed crash? And he adds, greetings from Spain.
Yeah, a good question. Boeing did a number of studies on what happens following fuel exhaustion. There is an electrical supply, even when the two main engines flame out. There is a piece of equipment called a RAT, which doesn't stand for a large mouse, but stands for Ram Air Turbine. And this flips out from the side of the aircraft. It's like a windmill in the slipstream, and it generates essential electrical supply. So it gives you the minimum you need to be able to still fly the aircraft.
So, Richard, it was the APU and or the RAT that kicked in to repower the satellite transmitter that gave us the seventh arc. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The sequence is when the main engines both cut out, and there's no generator in the engines supplying the electrical power, then the APU will automatically kick in. That takes a little while to come online. And when that exhausts the last bit of fuel in its feed pipe, then the rat will be deployed as the sort of final backup for electrical supply. And when that fails, there's still a backup battery for certain equipment. So it's a long sequence of different forms of electrical supply.
So, on the same vein with a high-speed crash, a question for Richard. If it was a high-speed crash, wouldn't there have been bodies washed up in the Indian Ocean, beaches, etc. by now?
Well, I don't want to go into any details on the air because just the sensitivity to the next of kin.
Mm.
But let me just make one statement. A human body will float for a maximum of 2 weeks, and then the body will sink. So, going right across the Indian Ocean and washing up on ocean beaches is not possible.
Yeah, that's uh, yes, and yeah, and in the case of Air France 447, most of the passengers were still inside the airplane, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, most will be strapped into their seat, and therefore you won't find a lot of floating bodies.
Yeah. Daniel says Seychelles is a country in the Indian Ocean with 115 islands. Most of those islands do not have human presence to spot debris. Has anyone considered looking over there for debris on the shores? Well, that's interesting.
Yes, it is, and I've sailed through uh, the inner and outer islands of the Seychelles for several weeks. I've visited about 20 of the 115 islands. There has been no official search of any of the coastline anywhere in the Indian Ocean. The 115 islands in the Seychelles have a coastline total of 491 kilometers. But the total in the Indian Ocean of those countries where debris has been found from MH370 is over 16,000 kilometers.
Mm.
We have relied totally on the initiative of Blaine Gibson
Yep.
and a number of alert tourists and locals who've handed in 43 items, but there are many more still out there.
Yeah, Blaine's done an amazing job, hasn't he? Of not only collecting pieces up, but galvanizing all the locals and making them aware of what to look for. So he's done an extraordinary job. Well done to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all we've got time for today, viewers. Thank you for giving us these questions. Please keep them coming. And please subscribe to us, please like us, and do please tune in tomorrow for another edition of Daily Airline News focusing on the search for MH370. And Richard, thank you once again for all the work you've done to support this series. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.